Hello and welcome to 5-Year Club video number 63. If you're not saving right now, you will never make enough money to save. There is never enough money to save. If you say, I'm not saving because I only make this and I can't afford to, it's not true. You'll make more money and you still won't save because there will always be reasons not to save. When I started working, I made $60K and I saved half of my take-home pay. I put it into a 401k, and I picked a horrible investment, and I'm sure that I lost most of that money, or at least it didn't grow at all. And certainly a few months later, I moved to San Francisco, and I think I went down to saving a third of my take-home pay instead of half. But the point was that I had the mindset coming out of college, like, can't increase costs, need to save money, willing to live in a weird way to save tons of money. And I was able to do it because that was my mindset, and that was how I was framing everything. I lost that mindset, and I ended up making more money and spending absolutely everything. I had no savings at all for years 2010, 2011. Just spent absolutely everything. And I wanted to read you some articles today and to point out some things from these articles so that you really understand that and you really can read these yourself and kind of internalize what I'm saying. This first one is about people living in Silicon Valley. Scraping by on six figures, tech workers feel poor in Silicon Valley's wealth bubble. Big tech companies pay some of the country's best salaries, but workers claim the high cost of living in the Bay Area has them feeling financially strained. People cycle and stroll through Facebook's main campus in Menlo Park, California. Many Silicon Valley techies say they still feel priced out of living near work. I didn't become a software engineer to be trying to make ends meet, said a Twitter employee in his early 40s who earns a base salary of $160,000. It is, he added, a pretty bad income for raising a family in the Bay Area. The biggest cost is his $3,000 rent, which he said was ultra cheap for the area for a 2-bedroom house in San Francisco where he lives with his wife and 2 kids. $3,000 is cheap for a house in San Francisco. He'd like a slightly bigger property, but finds himself competing with groups of 20-somethings happy to share accommodations while paying up to $2,000 for a single room. That's also true. I'd point out, though, that he should not be paying this $3,000 alone because he has a wife, and she should be working, and she should be paying $1,000 or $1,500. And his expectation that he should be able to cover the cost of a house alone with one salary is unrealistic and kind of weird. And I think to say that you can only live a happy, good life if one of the parents is working, the other staying home, that's wrong. You just have to look at that situation and say, okay, well, we can make fabulous money, but both of us have to work to make this house work. All right. Families are priced out of the market, he said, adding that family-friendly cafes and restaurants have slowly been replaced by hip coffee shops. I think he's also right about that, but at the same time, you know, the Bay Area is a trade-off situation. Do you want a quote-unquote normal American family life, or do you want the money? Silicon Valley's latest tech boom, combined with a housing shortage, has caused rents to soar over the last 5 years. The city's rents, by one measure, are now the highest in the world. The prohibitive costs have displaced teachers, city workers, firefighters, and other members of the middle class, not to mention low-income residents. Now techies, many of whom are among the highest 1% of earners, are complaining that they, too, are being priced out. The Twitter employee said he had hit a low point in early 2014 when the company changed its payroll schedule, leaving him with a hole in his budget. I had to borrow money to make it through the month. This is sloppy. If you're making $160,000 and you don't have an emergency fund, you're not doing it right. The problem is not the area. The problem is your planning. He was one of several tech workers earning between $100,000 and $700,000 a year who vented to The Guardian about their financial situation. Almost all of them spoke only on the condition of anonymity or agreed only to give their first names, fearing retribution by their employers for speaking publicly about their predicament. The American dream is not working out here. Complaints from well-compensated tech workers will sound like chutzpah to many of the other 99% who are struggling to get by on a fraction of their income. But there appears to be a growing frustration among tech workers who say, that they are struggling to get by. Facebook engineers last year even raised the issue with founder Mark Zuckerberg, asking whether the company could subsidize their rents to make their living situation more affordable, according to an executive of the company who has since departed. The cost of housing is a common complaint among Bay Area techies. Engineers can expect, according to one analysis, to pay between 40 and 50% of their salary renting an apartment near work. So the expectation that you are supposed to get an apartment to yourself near your job, it's a messed up expectation. When you're making as much as these engineers are making, $160,000 base salary, according to this guy at Twitter, that's cool. That's an amazing amount of money. Like, when you make that kind of money, you can retire in less than 10 years. That's an amazing amount of money. But if you pair it with these lifestyle expectations, like, I have to have my own private apartment near where I work, and I'm inflexible about that, and I'm going to spend my salary on that no matter what, then yeah, you may be blowing 40 or 50% of that salary on renting the apartment, and then why are you even bothering to make $160,000 in the Bay Area? Go somewhere else. You can have your own apartment in Austin, Texas, and after paying the rent, have more money left over. So you have to understand what the trade-offs are when you go into a job, when you go into a location. And you have to operate according to those trade-offs. And that doesn't mean the American dream is dead. That just means you have to put in some thought when you decide where to move and what industry to work in. One Apple employee was recently living in a Santa Cruz garage using a compost bucket as a toilet. Okay, that's just stupid. They don't actually say what the Apple employee was making, but I could make very little money and not need to use a compost bucket as a toilet. There is a gym for $10, and I can join the gym and use the toilet there for $10 a month. Another tech worker enrolled in a coding boot camp described how he lived with 12 other engineers in a 2-bedroom apartment rented via Airbnb. It was $1,100 for a fucking bunk bed and 5 people in the same room. One guy was living in a closet paying $1,400 for a private room. These people were getting ripped off. You don't have to pay this much. You can get $2,000 2-bedroom apartments in San Jose within walking or certainly driving distance of where I work, which is a very nice area. Now, is it the nicest apartment in the world? No. But it's got like a tiny little living room, and it's got 2 separate bedrooms, and it's got a bathroom. So I'm not sure why you're paying $1,100 or $1,400 for a bunk bed. That's crazy. We make over $1 million between us, but we can't afford a house, said a woman in her 50s who works in digital marketing for a major telecoms corporation while her partner works as an engineer at a digital media company. This is part of where the American dream is not working out here. Okay, if you're making $1 million between both of you, houses cost $1 million in my neighborhood. You can buy a house outright if you save for 3 years. You're spending too much money on crap. That is what this is telling me. The prospect of losing her job and not having health insurance is a particular concern given that she has had cancer a couple of years ago. If Obamacare goes away and I lose my job, I am deeply screwed, she said. You're making over $1 million between you. How are you not saving any money? Michelle, a 28-year-old tech worker who earns a 6-figure salary at a data science startup, said her only chance of buying a home would be if she combined income with a partner. This is pretty much true for houses in the Bay Area and even mini condos. For all the feminist movement of you can do it all, the concept of home ownership is really truly out of reach, she said. For me, that's disheartening. Another tech worker feeling excluded from the real estate market was 41-year-old Michael, who works at a networking firm in Silicon Valley and last year earned $700,000. Sick of his 22-mile commute to work, which can sometimes take up to 2.5 hours, he explored buying a property nearer work. We went to an open house in Los Gatos that would shorten my commute by 8 miles. Where do you work, dude? Los Gatos is a rich person area, so I'm not surprised that a $700,000 earning person is looking in Los Gatos. But Los Gatos is not the only nice area that's closer to this guy's work. So it was 1,700 square feet and listed at $1.4 million. It sold 24 hours later for $1.7 million, he said. You can get places here for less than that. It's probably, Um, it's not in Los Gatos, but the house is probably just as nice, and it's not selling for 1.7 million. Although he said his salary means he can afford to live a decent life. Decent. It's decent. 700,000. Decent. He finds the cost of living combined with the terrible commute unpalatable. The terrible commute's totally his fault. 100%. And the cost of living, when you're talking about $700,000, give me a break. You can eat out at a nice Silicon Valley restaurant every single night and still save half of a $700,000 income. That's ridiculous. He's had enough and has accepted a 50% pay cut to relocate to San Diego. Good luck, dude. We will be unequivocally better off than we are now, he said. He won't miss some of the more mundane day-to-day costs like spending $8 on a bagel. $8 on a bagel at $700,000 a year is not your problem, bud. And coffee, or $12 on freshly pressed juice. Get a juicer. Buy a freaking juicer. Give me a break. Michael isn't the only tech worker considering leaving Silicon Valley in search of a better life. A Canadian IT specialist in his late 40s earning more than $200,000 a year has a similar plan. When I came to the Bay Area, the amount of money they were going to pay me seemed absurd, he said. However, the cost of rent and childcare is very expensive, like $2,000 a kid per month, very expensive, which cost more than I paid for my university education in Canada, has been hard to swallow. Sam, 40, now lives with wife and 3 kids in San Jose, earning around $120,000 a year at a multinational software company. I get paid a very good wage, but I have 3 kids. Childcare is ridiculously expensive, and so my wife mostly takes care of them. That could actually make sense, because if he has 3 kids and they're, $2,000 a month each for childcare, and she's not making $6,000 take-home pay, then it makes sense for her to stay home. That's just how the numbers get crunched. If you're a couple in Silicon Valley and you decide to have kids and both people are not in tech or medicine, it's not surprising when one of you stays home to take care of the kids. He feels pressure being the sole breadwinner. I've got no safety net, he said. I have credit cards. He thinks credit cards are a safety net. That's an education problem. But this is not sustainable. If something bad happened, I'd be out of the house in a month. Glaring inequality. Fred Sherbin-Zimmer from San Francisco's Housing Rights Committee agreed that housing is too expensive in the Bay Area, but points out that there are much graver consequences for people not working in tech. Yes, there are. There are grave consequences for people not working in tech and medicine who choose to stay. For a senior whose healthcare is down the street, moving might be a death sentence, she said. For an immigrant family so the death sentence here is not... The death sentence is that they did not financially prepare for old age. That was the death sentence. For an immigrant family with 2 kids, moving out of a sanctuary city like San Francisco means you could get deported. Well, being here illegally means you could get deported. That's not a cost of living issue. That's a you are here illegally issue. And I don't care about illegal immigrants. I mean, I care about them like as human beings. What I mean is that if you're here illegally and you're trying to make something of your life and trying to make some money, great. I don't care. I'm not trying to deport anybody. But I do recognize that if you're here illegally, it's your responsibility to work the system to stay here. It's not California's financial problem that's causing that. She described a building in San Francisco where there are 28 people living in studio-like closets in a basement, including a senior and families with children. And certainly that's no fun. And I suspect that there are code issues there. And as much as I don't like housing regulation and code issues, studio-like closets, especially if they don't have windows, that's a safety issue. And there have been fire problems in Oakland. All right, keep going. For their part, many well-paid tech workers complaining about their own predicament say they also sympathize with the plight of people on more ordinary incomes. We think a lot about how people with normal jobs afford to live here, says the Canadian IT specialist. The answer is they don't. They commute from further and further afield. The digital marketer added, during the first .com boom, we had secretaries commuting 3 hours into work. It's happening again. It is absurd then and it's absurd now, she said, adding that she and her husband both know what it's like to be poor. if you're commuting 3 hours, you're not properly thinking about the risk and reward and kind of like time value of your life. This is a thinking problem. Sam, who works at the software company, isn't optimistic about the future. The only solution I see is a huge reset, and we've already done that once in the last decade. It was really painful for a lot of people, including myself, he said, referring to the dot-com crash in the early 2000s. Some tech workers expressed a sense of guilt about their complaints when so many people are worse off, including San Francisco's desperate homeless population. You are literally stepping over people to get to your job and to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, said Michael. How do you go about your daily life as if it doesn't matter? He suggested venture capitalists should stop investing in stupid applications and funnel some money into solving real societal problems like homelessness. Well, the problem here is that investing in homelessness doesn't have much of a return. In fact, it's not an investment. The people just consume your money and then the money's gone. And, he says they're stupid applications, but on average, VCs still get a return. That's why we have VCs. So when VCs invest money, generally it's, on average productive. And as a result, the world gets more overall pie, more overall money, so that there is more excess money in the world to solve societal problems. But the answer is not stop investing and start paying people who are badly off, because then you stop growing the pie. And when you stop growing the pie, there's less for everybody. You are caught in this really uncomfortable position. You feel very guilty seeing such poverty and helplessness, added Michelle, the 28-year-old, on a 6-figure wage. But what are you supposed to do? Not make a lot of money? Not advocate for yourself and then not afford to live here? Sam agreed. The whiny millennial snowflake type would say, "You're a terrible person making things worse for us. The truth is, if I gave up, what would I do? Should I knit sweaters and trade them?" Well, that's kind of a millennial dig. Is that the end of the article? I guess so. Anyway, point is, look, if you want to come to Silicon Valley, fabulous. It's really expensive. And you need to be working in tech. And you need to accept a really weird living situation if you want to keep a lot of that money, because housing is ridiculously expensive here. You'll make 25% more, say, in your paycheck or in your salary, and your housing will cost 4 times more than wherever you came from. So that is the deal. And as long as you recognize that that's the deal and you plan accordingly and you live in some weird studio with another person, or you have a bunk bed for only $500 in somebody's attic or whatever it is, then you're going to do great financially. But if you think you're going to reproduce living in the suburbs of Atlanta while living in San Francisco, it's not going to work. And it's very easy to find that out by looking at Craigslist or, asking a question on Reddit. So this article is from Monday, the 27th of February, 2017. Very recent article. Oh, no, a year ago. It's now 2018. Got to remember that. All right. The next article I want to show you. Similar article. All right. And let's move it around here. Fabulous. Feeling poor on $600,000 a year. From the New York Times. Everyone earning more knows it, but it comes as a shock to those earning less. The New York investment bankers under 30 with staggering $600,000 a year incomes are not rich and may never be. And this is totally true. When you begin making above 100,000, you look around and you notice that there are a lot of people making a lot of money, but they are still working and they are still forced to work and they are not getting rich. Investment bankers tend to play down the importance of how much they make, emphasizing instead the fierce competition that drives them and the intense pressure of their work. Success is what they seek, and their incomes are just a way of keeping score. They can measure their accomplishments by how fast they become partners or managing directors in their firms, by how many job offers they get, and by how much their peers respect them. All right, so I'm not going to read this entire article. I just want to jump to, I think, 2 points in the article. And let's go see. Okay, so here's one of my favorite ones. The accumulation of wealth is in and of itself just as important in defining yourself as what that wealth can buy, said a 26-year-old who has been working as a research analyst at a major New York investment bank for the last 18 months. I think in our society we've sort of reduced ourselves to an equation where net worth equals self-worth. The heroes of his generation, he said, are not the Reverend Martin Luther Kings. They were the T. Boone Pickens, Ivan Bosky, and Steve Jobs. Does this reflect his own feelings? I certainly hope not. And I wanted to highlight what wealth can buy. And what I mean by that is that you can make $600,000 a year, but unless you're driving a Ferrari, you don't feel wealthy. Weird thing. That's why the people buy Ferraris, because they work really hard to get these jobs. And when they spend the money, when they do the consumption, it makes their effort and the product of their effort more real to them. And of course, since they spent the money on a Ferrari, they're now not saving it. And since they're not saving it, they're not actually wealthy, because that Ferrari is dropping in value by like 30% in the first year. Poof. Ferrari money goes bye-bye. And the final thing I wanted to point out is from the last page of this article. And it says, "And when it stops, all the music will stop," he said. "The market will go down. The mergers and the acquisitions business will stop. Salaries and bonuses will go down. People won't be able to leave their jobs, or they'll be fired. The value of their stocks in the brokerage houses they own will go down, and the co-op market will go down, and it will all come unglued at once." In other words, people making $600,000 and feeling poor on it, they're getting a lot of money. The market's doing well, just like today. Just like February 28th, 2018, the market is doing really well. People are making a lot of money. Employment is very low. And it's going to stop someday. And when it stops, all the music will stop. And now I'm going to go back to the first page here. And I want to point out that this article, Feeling Poor on $600,000 a Year, was written April 26, 1987. April 26, 1987. And what do we know about 1987? In April, that article was being written. Black Monday happened October 19th, 1987. So just a few months after this article was written, stock markets around the world crashed, shedding a huge value in a short time. Black Tuesday, 22.6% drop in the stock market. The guy was right. The music ended and it all came crashing down. And obviously the market recovered and went up after that. But the whole point of this conversation tonight is that whether you're making $60,000 or $100,000 or $600,000, as long as you don't get confused about kind of what level of consumption that you deserve and think that you're going to reproduce, Nebraska in the 1970s in one of these major American cities, and be successful with that spending level, you're going to be fine. As long as you look at the amount of money you have incoming, and then you start by saying, I need to save this amount, and I need to adjust the spending level of my lifestyle around that amount. And I got to say, when you go to Vietnam, when you go to some of these third world countries and you look at how people there live, you're going to realize that living in the attic in the bunk bed here is a luxurious lifestyle. I think it's like an average American income is top 1% worldwide. An average American income is top 1% worldwide. We already live in luxury. We just don't know it. We don't know it so much that we can make $600,000 a year and we're still brain damaged and think it's hard to get by. And it's simply not the case. So if you're not saving now, it's because you're not saving now. It's not because you need more money. Although, you look, if you're making $20,000 a year, yeah, you need to go out and make some more money. Sorry. But if you are in the Bay Area, I'm not sure why you would be here, especially if you're working in tech, if you're not making some pretty good money. So, yeah, figure out how to save it. Read these articles. You can read the New York Times one in incognito mode if you have already reached your limit for the month. That is what I have done. And get your head right. Figure out how lucky you are. And once you know that, saving is a lot easier. That's it for video number 63. Have a fabulous evening.